So our learning objectives here is to define what is a human resources management and to identify the foundations of human resources management. Of course, if we define the human resources management as a simple definition, it's about planning, organizing, leading, and controlling of human resource. Planning is about how we create a job and how to fill up a manpower needed in the organization. Organizing, it's time to recruit a people that we needed in the organization to occupy a vacant position. Also, leading is how we'll give directives to the people, to the manpower on how to perform the job. And part of it is the performance management. If the people are complied or they must conform to the standards of performing a job. And controlling, it's about the jurisdiction of the organization when it comes to the labor and management relations. At the same time, the working conditions of the employees or the manpower inside the organization. And also controlling is also the jurisdiction of the performance of the employees when it comes to career advancement, or it will going to be replaced in case of non-compliance with standards. And I forgot also to tell that part of the planning is the compensation or the remuneration rather. So those things are a basic definition of the human resources management. But take note, based on the definition that I've mentioned, of course, it covers the fields of staffing. So staffing is about hiring of people. So if we hire a people, we need an analysis of how many manpower needed to occupy a vacant positions that they used to perform in the organization. But we are not just only hiring or occupying, because there are some, because of planning, we create a controlling, we create standards by having a qualifications or a standards on how to conform when it comes to recruiting or hiring a people that we needed in the organizations. Okay, and of course, human resource management, it composed of management of people. You say management, it talks about handling the manpower, handling their skills and competencies, which needed in the organization that we have to value, we have to nurture in order to retain those performers or those productive people. Because our goal of the human resources is for the retention of the manpower, especially if those people are very productive and they are dedicated to perform their jobs that will help the company or the organization in meeting their objectives. Of course, because manpower or the human resource is also a capital or a human capital of the organizations, and they needed to perform a particular task in supporting to achieve the goals and objectives of the organization. And please take note that human resource management is we're just not only handling a people or the skills of the people, we handle those things in a macro perspective. So we say macro, it talks about general or a bigger companies, because handling a manpower in a small business is an easy thing. But if you have a lot of manpower, let's say in a form of a corporation or a big company, there are a lot of people in the organization. That's why we have to that's a macro perspective. That's why we have to manage the people in order to have a collective relationship or a good relationship between the management and employees. And that is part of the controlling, which I mentioned, to control the people when it comes to the performance, the working relationship of those people in the organization, particularly in management. So what are those basic functions of the human resources management? So from the basic functions, those are the foundations which it composed of human resource planning. Okay, as I had said on definition, basic definition, it's about planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So, and then from the functions, recruitment and selection, training and development, that's part of the organizing and leading. But when it comes to performance management, compensation management, and labor relations, it's about controlling. Controlling by establishing standards, and then we have to measure the performance of those employees in performing a job and take some corrective actions by having a jurisdiction. If the employees pass the standards, they will get promoted, or it can be demoted, or it can be terminated for a just cause. It's a part of controlling. And compensation is about also a part of the plan on giving benefits and adjust compensation to adjust compensation or salary to the people who perform the job based on the qualifications. And also the labor relations management is also about the relationship of the employees and management by means of organizing a labor organization and how they will negotiate into a collective bargaining towards the working condition and the compensation of the employees. So those are the basic functions for the foundations of human resource. So let us discuss it but one by one. So in the human resource planning, it composed of a forecasting, job analysis, and job design. So the forecasting, it's about to predict the demand of the manpower. The demand for the manpower or human resource needed in the organization. So it's a matter of a job, it's a matter of a demand and supply. But before we should analyze and we should conduct a manpower inventory based on the task to be performed and the revenue of the company. Because take note, human resource is also a capital, human capital, because the retention of the manpower is based not only on the performance in performing a job, but on the performance towards the sales. Because if the business or the organization earns a lot of profit because of the productive manpower in achieving the organization and the business is growing, then there will be a need of additional manpower because they are growing, the business is become bigger and they need extended offices or extended jobs. So we are in need for a manpower. That's why we forecast. Okay? That's why we forecast. But if the company or the organization may suffer from the crisis, just right now, what happened right now, the pandemic, and people have lost their jobs because there are some companies have do cost cutting because of the overhead of the manpower, and that's the surplus. They used to cost cut by having a retrenchment of some people, and we have only to retain people that needed in performing a job. It is part of the forecasting. It is very important that we have to identify the status of the business is in the growing part or is in the crisis part. Okay, so it's a matching of the demand and supply of the human resources. So if the business is growing, then what we need is additional manpower, and we need to conduct an analysis and recruit additional manpower. But if the company are experiencing crisis and there are a lot of overhead in the manpower, that's the saddest thing that happened. They have to retrench the people, and they have only to retain the people that based on the revenue and the tasks that need to be performed rather. Okay, and that is it is the job of the human resource department for the forecast of the manpower needed based on the output, based on the revenue. whether we like it or not. That is the reality. Next is the job analysis. The job analysis after we forecast, it is about the process of collection or gathering of information towards the duties and responsibilities, or the duties, responsibilities, the responsibilities or the tasks to be performed by a particular job position, and also the qualifications by means of skills and talents that qualifies to perform a job. And also with the working environment in order to perform the task. So that's the job analysis. So we have to analyze a particular job position, what are the tasks to be performed that we put those duties and responsibilities, and together with the requirements or the qualifications for a person who occupy the job position. And the job design is after you do the job analysis, it talks about you organize and outlining of the duties and responsibilities, that you compress all those data as a single unit of achievement in order to decide to reach the desired goal. Okay, so the job design is about the creation of the job vacancies that we use to promote or to be marketed by means of recruitment. Okay, and after that, after you conduct those HR planning, the forecast, the job analysis, and job design, the next step is recruitment and selection. Because if you have the job design and if you need a manpower, please take note, if you need a manpower, additional manpower to occupy a vacant position, and for as long as there's a manpower request, and if the inventory of the manpower is outnumbered and not overhead or outnumbered, so do we need to occupy vacant position? If it is need an additional manpower, or we need to replace a manpower, we need to replace a manpower who is voluntary or involuntary terminated in the company. Okay, so recruitment is about an activity of looking or searching aspiring applicants that will be, what we call this, aspiring applicants. We are looking, searching, and seeking for aspiring applicants that will be qualified and for possible hiring that will occupy a vacant position. So what are those recruitment process? Okay, so the recruitment process of the this function is to formulate a recruitment strategy. So what are those recruitment strategies that we use to recruit, to search manpower or a qualified manpower? Because we have our qualification. We use the cold calling. We use to cold calling is only one a strategy that we use to call the applicants once you already post the job opening, and there's also aspiring applicants, or you can use social media to post the job postings and even the job street or walk-in applicants in your company. Okay, and then after there are a lot of people who are applying for a vacant position because of your job posting, now it's time also to search job applicants if there are people who apply. And after that, you should screen the applicants because, of course, because there are a lot of aspiring applicants, but you have to screen it, you have to shortlist who are from among the applicants are qualified for the position that you need. And maintaining pool of applicants. Say maintaining, so after you screen the applicants, you have to maintain by providing recruitment assessment, examinations, interview, and once they pass all of those things, and you already selected him as part of the hiring process, then they will become an employee. Okay, so what are the sources of applicants? The sources of applicants are internal and external sources. Internal, it can be within inside the company, especially if there are vacant positions in the company and there are also existing employees in the company, they want to transfer on the department or transfer a position from one position to another, then that will be a case of internal recruitment. Okay, and external sources, of course, the aspiring applicants outside, just like the walk-in and the online applicants or job seekers. Of course, one of the sources of applicants are referrals, which are referred by the employees inside the company, or it can be referred by a friend or a colleague that you need for a job, to occupy the vacant position. Job fairs, of course. In the pre-pandemic, we use the job fairs, okay? We use the job fairs because to have a lot of exhibits in order to market, on those job fairs are the labor markets that we are looking for a job applicants. If there are those from those applicants are shortlist that you needed. And also the internet-based recruitment portals, just like the JobStreet, okay, and even the email. And after that, so after the recruitment, so let's say you already hired a people, an applicant to be an employee, and you make a job offer. The next function is the training and development. Training and development is not only for the new employees or the newly hired employees, but it is also applicable to the existing or old employees. Why? Because the objectives of the training is to improve the productivity, the quality, and the quantity of the employee's output, to update the skills needed for a job, and to increase the motivation of the people to perform the job, and to create more favorable attitudes, such as the loyalty and cooperation inside the organization. That's why we are not only have those existing employees and the newly hired as there is, but through the training and development, the organization change those employees. They change the mindset. They transform the skills of those people that needed for a job. Not only that, by giving a career advancement within the organization. That's why that's objective, is correct, is to create more favorable attitudes and also to retain the effectiveness of their job. And also the objectives of the training and development, it will help the employees for the career advancement, as I had said, for the promotion, and also help the organization to respond on the dynamic market conditions and changing customer demands. That's why we train people in order to become flexible, and they are capable to adapt the changes. And of course, training and development also objective is to satisfy the human resource planning requirements. Another function is performance management. So it's about measuring, evaluating the performance of the manpower, if they conform to the standards, and there will be a jurisdiction when it comes to it, if they are going to promote or not. And performance management also is about handling the key performance indicators that we can put to the actual performance of the employees, because we need also to test and assess and evaluate the employees if they really perform well. And this performance management can also help to determine the weakness of the employees that will undergo a training. Okay, and performance management is also the essential job and to the employees expected to do, and how the employees contribute to the goals of the organization. That's why we have to test those employees if they are productive and conform to the company standard when it comes to employee performance. Okay. And performance management, as I've said, it will be measured versus their actual and to identify the barriers of performance and how those barriers must be removed from those employees. And of course, this is the critical part of the HR management is the compensation because it is about it's a part of the HR plan to conduct a salary structure of the organization based on the ranking of the employees and their performance. Okay, so the compensation management is it's about assigning of a basic salary and wages to a particular position, and it must be also conform on a legal basis like the minimum wage law in the labor code. Okay, and compensation it's about a rewards or a payment to those people who render services. Okay, for those people who perform the job. So compensation, it also involves financial returns, not only on the part of the employees, but on the part of the organization. Because of course, if the employees are productive, they are perform well in their jobs, it will help the company to boost their sales and revenue. Of course, the management will give that kind of incentive as a return from the effort and performance of it, of the employees, okay? So if there's a good compensation management, and that there will be also a good employment relationship. Okay, so what are those part of the compensation management? It's about the basic salary and the benefits. By the way, compensation is the salary, the payment, but salary and benefit is the remuneration. Okay, so of course, in the benefits, we have the mandatory and discretionary benefit. The mandatory benefits, those are the benefits mandated by the law that the companies or employers are required to give to the employees. But according to the labor code, if the company have existing benefits, which is institutional, and that is a discretionary benefit, it shall be applied. Okay. So what the labor code said tells there is a requirement of giving a mandated benefit. That also be as a part of motivational factor to the employees on a monetary basis. And please take note that the compensation, it should be adequate to meet the needs of the employees. Of course, where we have a minimum wage law. Equitable, it should be equal to all employees, but for me, from the word equitable, it should be proportionate. Proportionate in terms of the qualifications of the employee because we have our salary structure based on the ranking. Balance, of course, cost effective, and the compensation must be secure or it should be confidential. It should not be discussed to other employees to avoid comparison. Incentive providing, and it is acceptable to the employee. That's why in the job offer, when there's a new applicant, you give a job offer for salary, it's up to the a qualified applicant to accept or to reject. And of course, the compensation, it should be compliance or conform to the legal regulations, which is the labor code. And the last one is the labor relations. So this is also the critical part. It's about the relationship of the labor and the management when it towards the working condition and the compensation or the remuneration. That's why if there are some employees who are not feel happy or they are not feel secured on the company, this is the reason why the employees are established a labor unions. And under the law, the management will not coerce or will not prevent people or their regular employees for establishing a labor union that will serve as their protection or to fight for their rights as the employee to give the working conditions and the compensations which they deserve. Okay? And this kind of a situation, it should be under negotiable or it should be bargained by the both parties. And I hope that this kind labor relation will not end up on a dispute, because if there will be a dispute, it will be the job, the task, even the business activities of the management will be affected. That's why it is very important that we should retain a good relationship between the employees and the management. And of course, the global human resource management. So if we talk about a global human resource management, it's those functions of management that can be applied all over the world, regardless of the countries. Okay, it's how they used to conform or apply in their organization setting. So there are several factors that the human resources management is different in the global human resource and domestic environment, or the global environment or the domestic environment. So what's the difference? The factor is the worldwide labor markets. Yes, if we talk about worldwide labor markets, there are a lot of people with different races, different cultures that considers the quality of work, the qualifications of the people who perform the job in the labor market. And one example of that is Filipino labor markets. You know what? Why are many foreigners love Filipino labor markets? Because one of the characteristics of the Filipino labor markets, they are hardworking, they value the job they have, regardless if it is very hard to perform, because from being hardworking and taking care of their job, Filipino labor markets deserve to get paid by the foreigners. Okay? And we should be proud of to be on that. Another factor, there is a different work mobility. So work mobility, it talks about increasing of work, because of course the unemployment is approaching, especially in times of pandemic. It is very approaching in times of pandemic. But the government of each country never stops on creating goals or projects or activities in order to fight the unemployment, establish more infrastructures and business that will create more jobs. So nobody will get behind towards unemployment, especially our country. Another factor is the managerial practices. Of course, that's a difference between the global and the domestic, because people have many practices towards leadership, towards handling people and working relationships. Also, the difference between the national and global orientation. Yes, that's why we have to be considered to identify those orientations, and so we know how to adjust. And the final factor is control. So of course, we have also to establish a standard. Not of course, every global domestic environment has different standards that we use to conform or to measure. That's why it is also a fact that we have, of course, that we have to identify those things. Of course, make sure that these standards or policies are applicable, has a limitation of limitation of compliance, if it is a domestic or global or national. Okay, so that will be our topic for today when it comes to the week 1, which is the foundations of human resources management.